All right, we're recording. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to I think we're at episode 4 at this stage, Baron.
Sounds about right.
Yep. We're,
Cheers.
we're cycling back to Path of Exile 1 for this one, but we're going to touch on a bit of Path of Exile 2 stuff as well while we're at it. So, welcome to Coffee and Chaos, episode 4. We may need to have like a theme name of the episode or something like that, and then I can edit that in, but I don't know. Anyway, so we've got I've got coffee. Have you got your coffee on, or you got water today?
I'm the one who's in a time zone where it's appropriate to have coffee. It's 6 in the morning here. I don't know about you.
I didn't sleep last night. um, all right, so I guess like we're going to approach this with a bit more of a free sort of approach. To how we sort of do these convos. We used to do a bit more of a listed approach, but yeah, we'll see how we go with this. But Baron, how are you feeling about the league so far?
It's been great, man. I feel like this is one of those times where the hype did not let down. Like we were talking about how exciting it was to be getting back into Path of Exile 1 and how great a new league was going to be. And for me, it's been exactly that. I've been having a great time. I've been putting out contents and guides and stuff. My own playtime has been a lot of fun. Just 10 out of 10. It's been great. How about you?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Like I obviously all of us had a bit of a perception that there might be some impact from such a hiatus. Was it nearly 11 months or so? But I think the Merc content has to be one of the most, and I think this is the direction they're taking moving forwards, is less like Lake of Calandra sort of stuff, more like absurd fun. And I like that. I'm really enjoying the Trathians. Is it Trathians?
Trothin? We talked
Trothans?
about this. I don't know how to pronounce that. Trothin with the R in the middle.
Trothan.
Trothin.
But I guess like off this and like some things that sort of stick out as not so prevalent as the new Pinnacles that have been added probably need a little bit of work to fold them better in. But I think
I
as
agree with that.
yeah, that they work, like they work, they have cool drops.
They're fine. They were a little underwhelming. It felt a little tacked on. I grant that. And a lot of my hype is just like being back in the mix of it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like it was good. It was fine, but he wasn't Cyrus, not the real Cyrus, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Not where you go into the storm that sits at the entrance arch and murders you every time you go in and breaks your
I
encounter.
will admit, it was nice to have a Cyrus encounter that felt a little bit more laid back, but like in terms of the whole like game design thing, like yeah, what I was encouraged by that they were talking about the interviews is like this is just kind of a step one, and future expansions can kind of build on this end game expansion thing and lean more into the Zana Shaper thing. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm glad they picked up the Zana storyline too. And it'll be good to see if the Zana storyline makes its way into Path of Exile too, because it sort of has.
I could
Yeah,
I could see it going either way. Like it would be a perfectly reasonable narrative thing for them to be like, no, let's let Path of Exile 1 kind of have its own thing, but it would also be kind of cool to unify the games a bit. They've got to kind of walk that fine line because they know they've got people who only play 2 and people who only play 1. So like maybe like little hints here and there, like kind of spice it up for the people who do play both, but without alienating. I don't know.
I think like even beyond that, like if they linked the storyline so much that it did have a draw card to pull people from 2 into 1 and vice versa,
I'd love that.
it sort of ties the two games together a lot better. And it's one of those unique cases where like both games are the active market from the developer at the very same time. So they're actively developing it, simultaneously. So they have this unique position where they could really anchor each game to feed off one another to get the maximum impact out of the storyline. And I feel like if they didn't do that, they'd really be like missing an opportunity here to really boost the player base up as best as you can. Because I don't think many other devs actually do that with multiple titles at the same time.
Love it. Feels like a connected universe a little bit. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's good.
the MCU of Path of Exile. Path of Exile. The was it the POEU?
POE gaming universe, yeah.
Yeah, sounds lame, man.
But yeah, just no, I like the idea though.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It could be a little bit of a draw, like, oh, what is that all about? Not necessarily like that's going to be the one reason that somebody picks up the game, but just to add a little bit more, like a little bit more intrigue to it. 10%, 15% more interested in it because, like, oh, I could learn more about that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. All right, so I guess like general feel post mortem of the league overall. What things have you enjoyed the most out of it, and I guess what things have annoyed you a bit out of the league so far?
Well, you know me, I like to get my bad news out of the way first. I'd say um, I have rarely, over the years that I've played Path of Exile, I've rarely been one to complain about performance. And I'm still not gonna like drag him too hard on it. But I've gotta say, just like objectively, like if I'm comparing to other league starts, I've had more graphical performance issues. Like I tried to run one of the nice big juicy blight strategies, and it wasn't that my build couldn't handle it. And I've got a good PC. It was just that the game couldn't handle it, and I'm trying to turn down graphic settings and stuff, and I was crashing every time I got more than a certain number of monsters on screen. So like that's a downer for me. Like I wish they'd clean that up a little bit. Um, let's see. Like I said, it was a little underwhelming with the end game bosses, but like I'm okay with it. Like I thought there was some creative choices there. Um, I'm never the one to say this, but like they were maybe like a little too easy. Am I allowed to say that? Like, like it was a little too easy. Normally, I'm not the one to complain about that.
I
Um,
I agree with that comment.
uh, it doesn't feel like my place, but yeah, no. And then other than that, like we're going to talk a little bit more about this. I'm sure we can dive in kind of like a separate conversation, but like I'm a little worried about how I personally am going to go going forward with the mercenaries because like I don't happen to think that they're going to go core, at least not in anything like their current format. And I've already kind of fallen into that easy trap of like, oh, this is nice. Like I can put this thing over on my mercenary, I can get this curse, and I can get this debuff, and like it's gonna be a different challenge coming back and building without that or with a much more limited version of that. But anyways, that's my down. The ups have been like all up. Like I've had great times with all the farming strategies I've tried out. Um, my build guide has taken off, so I've actually spent a lot longer on my first build than I normally would because I've been like pushing it as far as I can. I kind of feel like I've got a responsibility to do that
Mm.
for the community, but it's been great. I got my mage blood and everything, so I don't know. How about you?
I haven't got my mage blood yet, but I've got two fully decked out builds that are just
Nice.
smashing in. Look, yeah, like on the bad side of things, I agree. Like the new, I guess, pinnacle bosses aren't really very challenging. Like I would have liked to have seen them. Like you can basically just face tank everything in those instances. Like whereas like with Cyrus, you can't do that. There's like phased instancing with a lot of the bosses, like Shaper. I still stand by like Shaper and Cyrus. Out of all the bosses, actually, is one of my most favorite bosses outside of obviously Crystal King. Um, yeah, I don't get that feeling with the new bosses. They sort of seem a bit more ad hoc as well, based on how the mechanic works.
Mhm.
And whereas, like, you
Yep.
could really target the pinnacles previous to that, and then obviously there's buffing in the tree, but like there's nothing that buffs the drops in the tree or anything. Which yeah, obviously there is with the other pinnacles. So that's something that sort of stands out to me. Um, as far as the mercs go, I think the problem that I have with the mercs is sort of the same thing that you're talking about, but it's both a good and a bad thing. They're so
Oh yeah.
build enabling. And that's the
Yep.
problem as well. Like it's a good thing that they're build enabling, but because they're build enabling, if they change it too much into the future, and this is actually going to be a real question about Path of Exile as an overall into the future. Like, are they going to take the fun approach with Path of Exile and drop the vision? I didn't really see where the vision was coming into play with this league. This was like all about fun, and they've
Oh
been
yeah.
wanting to put mercs in for
No.
ages. It was in the interview, right? So, like, is
No.
this a permanent decision? I hope it is a permanent decision, but I definitely hope there's something that I don't want the mercs to be easily killable because they have to be chunky, but there is definitely like a balance there where they're not like Doriani's negative lightning stacking is absurd. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't even like I can't even bring myself. I know your recent build is using it. Respect that. I can't even bring myself to do it because I'm worried that like I'll just get too used to it. Like I can't like I can't even go down that path.
Once you use it, you just can't go back. It's just like
That's what I'm saying. That's
it's
the
too
problem.
good. It's too good. It's and that's the thing that's the negative that I have is like they put in this amazing tool to be able to make some of the craziest stuff in the game. But like, are they going to rug pull us like they usually do and just take it out? Like you think about like Crucible, for example, had where weapons had skill trees, and I still arguably think that should be in the game. But the problem then you start to talk about power creep, and this is like
Yeah,
absurd levels of power creep now. But
yeah. That's why they always call it borrowed power, right? But like even compared to borrowed power we've had before, I think this is I'm going to make the case, and I hope you disagree with me because I'm looking for counterexamples. But
yeah,
like, this might be the biggest borrowed power creep we've ever had. Like, compared to Original Harvest, right?
mm,
Original Harvest was busted, no doubt about it. Same with Necropolis for the same reason, because you could, if you were good enough and you had spent long enough in the league, you could eventually be like target editing items. But that was still just making perfect items for one character. You didn't have this whole separate set of equipment slots. Like
yeah.
Crucible, it was busted, yeah. It was build enabling, yeah, but it was still only one slot. It was still just your weapon and maybe your shield if you were doing. But like this is an entire other like half a character that you've got with you, and like this might be the biggest borrowed power. So that's how I don't see how they're going to keep it as anything like what they've got now.
I really sort of I sort of want it to stay very close to how it is now, but adjusted. And the reason for that is like we're at a point where Path of Exile is what 11 or 12 years old, something in the vicinity of that, and it's like
Yeah,
they can like it's already surpassed most other games, less things like World of Warcraft in age, right? And with the player base that it holds, it's not WoW player base, but it's still clocked out nearly 200,000 players on the 3.26 launch, which is insane. And its player base is still strong. Like the Twitch numbers are strong, the player base is
oh
strong.
yeah,
It's not dropping. It almost like knocked Path of Exile 2 off the table because it's actually fun. The biggest downsides for it were the technical issues at the start of the league, which obviously, which you touched on, which were a huge issue, right? And
yeah.
that definitely soured a lot of people's taste, but they've now sort of worked through that stuff now. I think the direction for Path of Exile to really boost the player base is moving away from like this, like where this overly complicated game and allowing these fun elements to come into play. And obviously, the other thing that it addressed, which was the elephant in the room for years, was players who complained about leveling up in the campaign. It basically
Mhm.
allowed you to quick level through the campaign with a support like from the very start of Act 1 and basically boost you through the campaign because like at a certain point once you play the campaign once, that's it, you just want to blast through. And this is actually something that we'll see. Well, we've already seen it in Path of Exile too, right? The complaints about the length of the campaign and everything else, and now the player base has turned on that because all the like the mesmerizing amazement from the first playthrough that you play through is gone. All the Dark Souls players have left because guess what? You have to do it again every single league or for every
And
character you
again,
have.
and again,
Yep,
and again.
it ain't so much fun once you've done it 20 times, Baron. Um,
Uh,
so
we would know.
exactly, that's it, and that's where I think like I'm looking at it, even down to like some things about the mercs, and we'll talk about this later in the podcast. But like some things about the mercs that are really interesting is the skill support system is the same as Path of Exile 2, so the rating of level 1 to 3 support gems.
That's a great point. I hadn't caught that, but that's a great
Yeah.
point.
Yep. And so there's just little things like I reckon they're gearing up to put it in Path of Exile 2. And honestly, if they did, I'm 100% there for it. I think that is the missing thing in Path of Exile 2 that would make it exceptionally fun without overboosting the character itself, but having another character that you need to level up and gear. And that's what I like about it. It's like the level of complexity that comes with having a whole second ass character to gear up and And the whole concept of it feels like they watched solo leveling, and like you're the main character out of solo leveling that can level up, and the merc that runs with you is like every other character that's a preordained level that can never move up, past S rank. And I sort of like it. Like it's yeah, I think the mechanic needs to come back because it's like so many people are going to get upset if they don't do that. Now they put a mechanic that would be wild to take out because it's amazing. But like it's got to come back in a way that's workable, more workable than it is currently.
I mean, you've got to balance the stuff like Doriani's, right?
Hmm.
Like, there's got to be like you can't have this situation where you feel like you're playing suboptimally if you're not doing this one thing. I've seen people comment this, and I agree with it. Even as somebody who's I'm playing a lightning build, but one that doesn't happen to benefit from Doriani's because I'm converting the lightning. But like I see that pull, you get that attraction. Like, geez, should I just drop the whole conversion thing? Just go straight lightning, and that's a problem. You don't want people thinking like I can't play the build that I want. Obviously, some people are going to have FOMO no matter what. But
Yeah.
when like the average person who doesn't like, I normally don't get that. I just want to play what I want to play. But if I'm looking at my build and I've got 20 million damage, and I see a very similar build, similar investment doing 80 million just because they slap Doriani's on a mark, that even starts to get me to go, geez, that's kind of nice. I think they've got to work on something like that. Um, balance issues, in short.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Like it should exist, but there's definitely things that need to happen to correct it a bit. But as an overall, I think outside of that, yeah, like server stability was an issue, but to be honest with you, it's been 12 almost 12 months since the league launch. And then they put like an OP mechanic in the game that is both an amazing addition, but also its own issue unto itself. But the like overall, not too much has changed in the game. Currency market's looking really good. Like invitation farming is
Mhm.
super profitable. Delve literally
Yes.
hollow fossils or one div each. That's wild.
I've I've I don't know when the last time was that there was such a robust economy that I felt like I could do anything I want. I
Yep.
can run simulacrums and feel like I'm doing a good thing. Delve, I can do blight, I can do settlers, I can like there's like I can pick anything. Harbinger, it all feels good. I don't know what they did right to make it feel like the economy is, but it's great.
It's because there's no like super meta crafting mechanic. Like for fossils, for example,
Mm,
they got boosted because with the thread stuff now that's added to your gear, fossils don't actually change the thread count on the gear, so you can hit it with a div orb and then
mm,
re-roll it upwards, which makes
nice.
crafting with the new pedaled gear and stuff like that is actually really lucrative because of that, which made the one of the key meta crafting methods fossils and resonators again,
Yeah.
which drove the price through the roof. But like I think like
And
any
I've taken advantage, just like you. I've taken
oh,
advantage. It's great.
100%. I think one of the problems they run into many leagues is they try and do like a metacrafting league, and that metacrafting league just absolutely scales out the market, and yeah, it doesn't. You end up with
It alienates anybody who's not doing those crazy mirror craft things. Like I'm capable of doing those things like late into a league, like working man like you. I'm not
mm,
like doing the crazy stuff. But like Necropolis, by the end of the league, I was doing my like crazy item editor stuff. But for the most part, that's driving out the average player base. Like
yeah.
if they do one big ticket craft, the average player that'd be a lot. Whereas with something, I guess this league mechanic isn't really having an impact on the economy so much, but just like in this economy, there's not just that one thing where you're getting like the ultra elite gear. You need a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, that's it, and that's what I think is making it so good. Like, and the uniques they've added in are relatively functional uniques as well. I just think, like, even gear changes across the board balance. Like, Ralakesh needed a nerf because basically
Oh
every
yeah.
build was using it for the last few years. So, from the time when they took away they changed it so you could boot swap. To then they just made it if you
Oh
stand
yeah.
still, and then they're like bugger it. It's just too ridiculous of an item. Like it's survived for too many years. Like, yeah.
Catch was exactly the thing I'm talking about with the Dorianis thing, where like I would be running an occultist and be like, it feels stupid that I'm not wearing Ralcash. I would almost like stubbornly be like, no, I'm not going to do it because it feels like I'm supposed to. So that's not a good thing, and I agree they should have changed it, and it's good.
Exactly. So I guess that brings us to like our builds. So you've definitely been playing Ark Witch this league.
That's right.
How's that treating you?
It's been awesome. So last week I put out a guide on the Arc Ignite Elementalist, and I was everybody asked lastly like, hey, can we get like a full league starter going through the leveling thing? And I'm like, yeah, man, definitely. Next time we've got a full league. Well, here we are, like a year later. Finally had an opportunity to like show from a league start scenario. And it's been awesome. I was a little dubious of how the golems were going to go with the golem changes, but they're so busted. It's so good. Um, so yeah, I've got my build. 20 mil plus damage. Obviously, not nothing compared to the Doriani's guys, but it's doing really good. I'm rocking T16 5s, tier 17s, simulacrums. It feels really good. It's tanky. Got my mage blood. Got a lot of guys uh, coming up through reporting having success, and even Enki, the famous Ark Witch Enki, stopped by my channel to say he's playing the build, which is ridiculous, and it's super flattering and also like terrifying because like that's a really high bar to set. Like he was the beginner friendly king, so to have him come by and say that he's playing it is wild. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. How about you? What have you been playing?
I got two builds, no mage blood yet, but first one was Sunder Chieftain, which I think a guy by the name of Farah took my build and got to like #1 on the Sunder ladder for Delve with it. I was like, bastard.
Nice.
But yeah, no, super OP build, and carried me through the league start and everything. And then I went, I want to bring back. I was going to play Divine Ire, and then I was like, it just doesn't feel that good. And then yeah, I ended up playing Lightning Tendrils again, and I think I got it up to like now it's up to like 50 to 60 mil DPS. It just melts
I saw it.
everything.
It looked great. I checked it out.
Uh,
That looked really good.
you just tank everything, and like I'm just blasting through Delve, taking down 650 plus Crystal Kings without any hassles. Like it'll reach 1,000 depth Delve with a Mage Blood, probably like 1,500 depth. But then like another guy, Bert, and I'll put a link in the description of this video for his channel. It's a small channel where he's been uploading. He's taken Shield Crush, got it to 170 million DPS or some crazy number, 129 million maybe, and just sitting at like 2,500 depth delve, face tanking everything, and I just went, this wild, like. Yeah, this league has been really good for builds. I think the next one I want to do is going to be a Rakata's was it blade trap of greatsword?
Oh, the great swords. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Nobody
Brachiotis. That'd be fun.
yeah, nobody's doing that. And I was like, "Oh, that actually sounds like a lot of fun." So it might be that or I want to play one of the Trathian gems, probably like the Wave of Conviction one because I've got a
That
template for
looks
that.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, the go in and out, or the out and then back in thing. I'd be interested to see how that actually feels like in practice to go through maps and play.
I think on the Elementalist, I've got a CI variant for that Wave of Conviction itself. So I think on the Elementalist, it could be really good. And then maybe Black Flame on top of that somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
then,
would. You
yeah.
would.
And then run Profane Bloom and just go poof, 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 run through poof, 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 dead.
Oh my
Um,
god.
I'm now thinking about it. It actually sounds awesome and I want to do it. And actually, it would be super OP because of the mercs. So you'd use like a malevolence merc and scale up your
Uh-huh.
chaos dot. Yeah, actually, that sounded like build number 3 right there. Maybe the blade trapper is build number 4. The problem
I gotta
being,
get.
well, we got Path of Exile 2 that's going to come out or get
I
announced in
know.
August, and it's like we're not going to have enough time. It's really going to be the question like, do you play more Path of Exile 1 or switch to Path of Exile 2? Like, we never had these issues before. Like, previously, it'd be like, oh,
No.
we've got 4 months. Now it's like, we've got 2 months and then 2 months and then 2 months. And then you got to really be strategic about these builds now.
Yeah. I've never made any secret that Path of Exile 1 for the moment remains kind of my main game. So like I'll definitely do a league start for Path of Exile 2. We'll get into the end game. I'll figure out a fun build to make based on whatever's announced. Um, and then I'll see. I don't know. It depends on how I'm feeling about Path of Exile 1 at the time. Like if I still feel like I've got more to explore, I could see myself going back and doing another build. I don't know.
The issue that
Check it out.
the issue that I see with the difference in builds is I don't find Path of Exile 2, now that I understand it, and you might be the same disposition too. now that I understand the game pretty thoroughly to the point of making builds in the game, the problem I see with the game is it's very simple compared to Path of Exile 1. Like it's slap
100%.
yeah, slap gear, slap gem on. Don't worry about like the journey. It doesn't really matter. It's just like blast level to like level 85. Get all your gear in, get as high gems as you can, run around mindlessly blast maps all day long. It doesn't have that same like hero's journey feel, power journey that you make when you min max a Path of Exile 1 build, because there's just like candidly, and it's an incomplete game, and being fair on it, right, it's still in its baby stages, but it just feels lacking in a lot of ways when it comes to builds right now. I don't know if that's the way
We've
you feel.
we've talked about this, yeah, totally. And like I don't think that this is a forever indictment. And I think one thing we've talked about before that I think has the kind of hidden potential to bring PoE 2 to that level is it's going to be organic. GGG can't force a game to feel the way PoE 1 does. You just have to introduce enough little tools that they themselves don't know how they're going to work or what they're going to do, and just let us play in the sandbox. The example I used last time, and I stand by it, and I think just a lot of examples like this is, you know, you've got something like Shaper's Touch Gloves. You were at the time, this is months ago now, you were talking about a build where you ramped up one aspect of the build, and you were like, I really wish I had a tool to get X. Well, what if Shaper's Touch existed in the game and you could ramp your strength and get a bunch of energy shield off of it or
Mm.
whatever, and just 1,000 tools like that add the kind of depth and complexity so that you're not always scaling the same exact thing every time. Like, I feel like I have to make a decision in Path of Exile 1 for how I'm going to scale a build. Am I going to scale this hit base? Am I going to scale this ignite base? Okay, I'm scaling it ignite base. Am I going to convert this? Am I going to do exposure this? And like, there's just not as many different elements. And I think that's what provides that feeling of the incremental change and the depth and complexity. So hopefully, this is the hope, as more items, as more mechanics, as more classes get introduced, it doesn't happen all in one snap where it flicks over and suddenly becomes the level of complexity the Path of Exile 1 has, but it's just kind of ramping process where it kind of emerges organically. It's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and like some of the things again that come up, like in for example with my Sunder build, right? I switched it between running two-handed axes to staves, right? And
Sure.
that's one of the biggest issues in Path of Exile 2 right now. So like weapon locking gear, and it's probably never going to change, but weapon locking skills I find like you can take the same skill and retool it like four, five, six different times, or six different ways in Path of Exile 1. So like you can look for different optimizations to, you know, refine it out. Whereas like Path of Exile 2, you just simply can't do that. And because of that, it's limiting because there are different defense options, different offense options that exist for each different weapon type. But when you sort of narrow the path down to one type of weapon, it makes it simpler, yes. And arguably for a market that's looking for less complexity, then that's great. But I feel like it's very limiting in that respect. The other thing too is like purpose of how skills interact as well. Like PoE 1, it's like you're building around one or two key interactions and everything else builds into the synergy. And I feel like for example, I'll give you another example of this. So my again Sunder build, 5 buttons that you need to activate maximum damage in a certain sequence. And then, there are certain war cries you need to run, like Enduring Cry, to keep your life regeneration going at a higher rate and your endurance charges building, so you're survivable. And that's, depending on the situation, that's dependent on the war cry you use. I actually find that to be meaningful combat. Come back to that word,
Hmm.
meaningful combat. No such thing in Path of Exile 2. Like, there probably are builds like that, but they're not the builds that people are getting to pure endgame. That it's just like, I look at like you know, for example, my was it fire shot build that I was running,
Yep.
incendiary shot, where basically,
Incendiary. Yeah.
yeah, you just blow the whole screen up, 2 items, one skill, and then drop some artillery ballistas down, and Bob's your uncle done. And I feel like that's one of the problems with Path of Exile 2, is it just oversimplifies things to the point where you don't even need to run more than two skills to actually interact. And also the timing, the wind-ups, like if you compare my Sunder build in Path of Exile 1, where it's just like going off the chains, Sunder's blowing screens up and everything, and it's satisfying, and then you play a Sunder build in Path of Exile 2, I should do a side-by-side of this, actually. It'd be wild to look at
It's
that.
not even close. Yeah, no,
There's no,
you can't do anything.
doesn't have that
Even with
same,
trample toe, try it
yeah.
out. Like it's not going to look like that. But like I wanted to follow on I wanted to kind of follow this thought experiment of what you made a second ago
Hmm.
about the weapon locket, right? And how different weapon types you said have different defensive things that you lean into, right?
Mm.
And so like think about the flow on effects of that, the way that like not just the immediate consequence of that, but the flow out effects of like let's say you've got a build that's locked into a quarterstaff and you can't possibly use a sword and shield with it now, like a cyclone or whatever. There's no cyclone in PoE 2 yet, but like and then think about what happens after you go like okay, I'm going to go sword and shield, and like what kind of options that unlocks for you, how you have different options for scaling block now, and that means that you get access to different masteries, but then you've only got the one-handed options, and like there's probably stuff that I can't even think of in real time that flow on from like okay, now you've got a shield, now I can shield charge around the map. That's a small one, but like it's not even like the first order effects of just now I can scale block more easily versus I can't. It's there's going to be second and third and fourth order effects in terms of your build design decisions. And I wish in real time I could think of better examples than that. But like that's the kind of thing that kind of lies beneath the surface that by introducing just a little bit of added complexity in every area, it kind of multiplies out
Yep.
and makes it more complex.
So to build on that, for those who don't really know what we're talking about around that, so basically the difference between axes and staves in Path of Exile 1, as a great example here, is axes are great front drive damage at the end of the day, right? They scale with bleed really well, maim, things like that, but their defensive capabilities drop off in endgame severely. Whereas staves allow you to have implicit block, which then you can scale in the pathing tree, and that can actually help you build things like power charge generation on block, and a lot of those nodes are also crit based nodes and or higher scaling defense nodes. So if you're playing things like delve characters, running a stave setup is more beneficial to your defense configuration because it means you don't have to invest as much into like your armor and other things, and you can put that to cover off on your other stats or bring your health pool up. But you can basically get your staff to compensate for the defensive side while making you more powerful because you can survive bigger hits and attacks and or more volumes of attacks while still outputting huge amounts of damage because you can scale a stave up to 1,000 plus DPS as you can an axe. There's just a different way to go about it. And also then the cluster jewels change as well, where you can get free fortify with staves. So whereas like axes have, more front load damage, more armor on their cluster jewel setups as well. So you get two pathing options there where it depends on what you're doing with the build. You can go either route and you're not going to be incorrect. Like you could run at serious disfavor and things like that and scale huge amounts of bleed. That's some of the big advantages of having multiple weapons be able to use the same skill, because it opens up the ability to then vary the skill. Like even with staves, you can get elemental rolls which are going to be more effective than on axes. So you could run again a lightning setup with Sunder just for the the shits and gigs. But like you can't do that in Path of Exile 2 currently.
I knew you were going to come to the rescue. Thank you. I knew you'd come to
Yeah.
the rescue example. And you're right. I used a bad example of staves versus shields. I should have done the axes versus staves was better.
Yeah.
And then the flow on effects. Like you talked about how staves are better with block and better with crit. Well, there's also some AOE nodes that go with power charges and with crit and with staves, and you can work that all together, and suddenly you get better AOE with staves. And there's just so many
I'll make it even
more
more.
than we could possibly list.
I'll make it even more wild. Cyclone with staves, you can use Shockwave. You can't do that with
There you
axes.
go.
So you get increased
Perfect.
AoE performance. So arguably, you could create an insane build setup with that too. And that's But then on the other side, bleed is going to be more effective if you were going for a bleed cyclone build, for as another example there. So there's a different use case based on the type of weapon, but because there's no limiter on how the weapon is appended to the skill or the skill's appended to the weapon, it gives you a lot more build variety, and then you can go and do crazier stuff. That's currently the problem with Path of Exile 2, the way that I see it. It probably likely never change because the solution seems to be add more things in. I think at a certain point though, like they need to allow for like different classes to be able to switch their weapon tiers, or like a jewel that allows weapon tiers to interact with other weapon tiers or something like that. But then how do they achieve that? Like, or maybe this will be part of like as the game expands and more weapons and options come in, they realize, okay, maybe we need to vary that more. Um, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, because the foundational game's really been locked to that. This is the weapon. This is the skill that goes with that weapon. And like
Yeah.
there, that is in Path of Exile 1 with like wands and stuff, but like wands and
Sure.
scepters, same deal.
Very reasonable restrictions there. You know, like a skill that has arrow in the name, fine, I with a bow. You know,
Hmm.
things like what viper strikes, things that go like dagger and claws and feel thematically relevant. Those are not the majority though. Like a lot of skills can be used. Even a case like viper strike, isn't that one that you can use with both a dagger and a claw? Like
Yep.
even if it's limited, there's still a couple options with little variations there. The difference between dagger skill, one thing higher, claws have like innate leech or gain on hit and stuff like that. You know, reasonable restrictions, but wherever it would be thematically appropriate to let you do something like Cyclone or Sunder with a bunch of different skill gems, or a bunch of different weapon types rather, than they let you.
Yeah, that's it. But I guess that covers off on our feelings
Kind
about
of,
Path of Exile 2 on our list, eh?
I was thinking the same thing. We said we were going to talk PoE 2. That kind of does it. Uh,
All right, and we've sort of covered off on should Mercs go core. Like I'm of the mind, yes, but you're on the bench.
I can see it either way. My worry is I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket and say like yes they should absolutely go core, because I'm hedging my bets in the back of my mind that like I don't know if they're gonna like if they do, they might get like a harvest style neutering, nuke from orbit, where it's not even anime guardian, where you can put on like an amulet and two rings or something like that, and that's it. I don't know, but I have no problem with it if they want to have it go core. I think it'd be great. Unlocks variety. Just make sure it's balanced. Make sure that things like the Doriani stuff is cleaned up, and I'm all good.
I think it'd be pretty easy.
Speaking,
Oh, sorry. Well, I was going to say, I think it'd be really easy for them to add it in as an Atlas tree passive, and then they'd be like, you could get, an increased chance of this type of strength in
oh
whatever.
yeah,
They could do something with that, and that would probably work. But then the Atlas tree is getting pretty wild as it is. Like
and what do you do? Do you remove other stuff? Do you make it tighter on points, or do you add more ability to get points? And it's the whole thing.
cluster jewels.
But people have been talking about Atlas Club day the Atlas passive tree was introduced. They were like, imagine if jewels. Yeah, I could see it.
Oh, the
People, and then once we had the Freesia idols, people were like, add the idols, but as cluster jewels onto the tree.
I can't fault that. I think it works, sort
No,
of.
I know.
Or dual sockets and the idols would go on dual sockets in the tree, and then obviously cluster jewels would then give you access to you could farm. But then like okay, then we need a league mechanic that you could farm the cluster jewels in, which would probably be the next league mechanic. It'd be like, oh, okay, so we've made it more lucrative to be able to play all different types of content. We've put all the base content in the tree and simplified things down, and then put everything else in cluster jewels. So now you can basically reintegrate with all
Is
your
is
favorite
that an
kits.
Australian person's version of a New Zealand accent? Is that what I'm hearing right? You're
No,
doing
that
the
was a smarty pants accent. No, we don't want
okay.
me we don't want me to start doing a Kiwi accent. That wouldn't be appropriate. Um,
Fair enough.
um, all right. So PoE 2 and Mercs. What are your thoughts? Improvement, not improvement?
So I mean, I think it would be an improvement. My mind immediately that one of my more recent builds in PoE 2 before we swapped to PoE 1 was this whole business I was trying to arrange of a tactician with like my dude, either my animal companion or once they introduced the official summon companion gem of just having like, buddy comedy, buddy cop movie, me and my one other guy running around doing stuff. And I'm wondering like, does that interfere? Like if they introduce the summon companion, which the whole idea of it is that you can give him a specific skill gem and link it and stuff. That was what they said they were going to do. Who knows if they changed that since it hasn't even been introduced yet? But does that interfere? Like, does that come too close to being what a mercenary would be? And they say like, oh, well, you don't need a mercenary. You can just use this summon companion guy, or can they coexist? Could you make it like what is it? Two's company, three's a crowd. Make three your summon companion, and your merc, and it's three running around together. Uh, I think there could be a place for that. Balance, as always, is the key. I don't want it to be where like you feel like you have to gimp your own gear in order to afford the gear for your mercenary. That's going to feel bad. But
Yeah.
something where they can be meaningfully helpful and be a meaningful source of decision making and investment. The idea that you can put time into them, that you can put thought into them, and have a different build and have a more powerful build. All that stuff is good. I'd be in favor of that.
I actually think there's a lot of really interesting things about the Path of Exile 1. I'm going to call it test of mercenaries. So number
Mm.
one is obviously the skill support system looks very similar to Path of Exile 2. The other, it sort of feels like when they included the mercs and the meaningfulness of the mercs and everything else, you have to fight the mercs, and the mercs were very strong. They could ghost you. And to be honest with you, I respect being beaten by an enemy combatant the way that the mercs beat you down. Unless you're in hardcore, then a lot of people would have been crying about that, and rightfully so. Um, I feel like the way that they approached that was in such a way that it's like they're not saying that they've already designed it for Path of Exile 2 for the next point 3 release, because I reckon they have. I reckon, I'm going to speculate, I could be totally wrong, but it just seems like too convenient that they didn't have anything planned for Path of Exile 1. And then all of a
Mm.
sudden, they turned around and they created this entire lore-based index of mercs with a skill system that's very similar to Path of Exile 2, with a
You make a good
combat.
point.
Yeah, like think about it, right? So they go like, oh, we want the mercs to be meaningful and we want the combat with the mercs to be rewarding. You have to earn the mercs to be able to use the mercs, right? That's some real Path of Exile 2 uh, big brain thinking going on there. Like that's basically how they pitched Path of Exiles to like the combat system in PoE 2. It just like what it says to me is they designed the system for PoE 2 already with an intention to include it. And then in an interview they said they've been wanting to put mercs in for years. Um,
Hmm.
and I
Well,
feel
I'll tell you this:
yeah.
if this is indeed a case where it was a case of quick, we've got this thing ready to go for PoE 2. We need a PoE 1 league mechanic. Toss it in there. Then they're never beating the allegations of PoE 1 as a PoE 2 testing ground. And I've always said I don't mind that. I don't mind that the two games have similar things and that you can test a thing in one game, put it in the other. But for the people who are pissed off by that, for the people who are like, give me something unique in PoE 1, well, they're never beating those allegations if the mercenaries were another testing ground.
I feel like they were, and it's like all the Frisia stuff. It's like they tested Frisia, and it's like, oh, this is cutting room floor content. And it's like this is amazing. Like,
Yeah, give it to me.
why would you cut some of the stuff that was in Frisia? Is insane. That the commander class on the Marauder was awesome, but like
Give me back my puppeteer, damn it.
yeah, exactly. And like everything about every class in that, or every ascendancy was amazing. But I have a suspicion that there will be some sort of companion system added to, or merc system added to PoE 2 now. Like it just there's too many things that line up with the way that those maybe like it's the PoE 2 devs just being like, well, we're working on PoE 1, so nobody's really going to notice as to whether or not like stuff looks like it could be in Path of Exile 2. Um, but let's chuck it in PoE 1 just because we had no other ideas or whatnot to see how it plays out. But yeah, like we talk about like even like buffs for movement speed, war cries, all that sort of stuff. The mercs are like a one-stop shop that gives you a big boost at the disadvantage of having to deal with the increased debuff of incoming damage. Also improves loot drop tables as well to a degree. Um,
Hmm.
I just don't know. I just don't know how they could not add it into PoE 2 now because it just seems like a mechanic that would go like you have a merc that gives you a quicksilver buff or like a flasking buff or something like that. Like it just makes
But
sense.
you get that, and then you've got to have, if you go that route, like there's going to be that can't do without my Quicksilver Merc, same way I can't do without my Quicksilver Flask.
Yeah, exactly. I need my intimidating cry war buff or war cry
Mm.
buffing and stuff like that. But yeah, like I think there's definitely something there that's looking like it could very well be a Path of Exile. And like the fact that they turned that around as quickly as they did to get a league out,
Yeah.
and flesh that out to the degree that they did is just like way too convenient. But
Like I will say, the existence of Freesia does give me, like, it does make me pause and think about how many things they probably do have on the cutting room floor that they could like elevate at a moment. So I was like, think about how fast they put Freesia together once they were like, shit, 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 things are bad,
yeah,
community angry, quick event. And so like, could the mercenaries have been something that had been brewing for a long time and they just needed to put like a chunk of work into it to kind of wrap it up? Maybe. Or, like you say, maybe it was something that the bulk of the work had been done for PoE 2. We don't know. We just don't know.
we don't know, and hopefully we'll eventually we'll find out in not too far of amount of time. And I guess that leads us into like the last question, which sort of segues into Path of Exile too. Point three. What's the feel? What do you think we're getting?
I don't know, man. It's really hard to gauge. I think the updates that have come so far have been at a slower pace than I think both I and they. I think by their own admission, they expected things to come more fast and furious in terms of new classes, new weapon types, just like radical changes to the game mechanics. Like they were changing things like the skill gem system up, like they were changing it constantly over and over again up until release, and then it's been basically locked in. Like just the overall, like the way that it works,
Hmm.
not just like little tweaks, little numerical adjustments, but the whole structure of it. And then they introduced basically no wild structural changes. Like they kind of, as they said, treated Path of Exile 2 as more of a launch release than a beta because of the amount of interest it got. They were kind of victims of their own success. So I don't know how much to expect in terms of like radical shakeups, especially since in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been a huge amount of time since point two.
Yeah.
But I definitely expect to see, it would be very surprising and a little worrying if we didn't see at least one new full class, and probably more. At least one full new weapon type and suite of gems. The act thing, they've been hinting that cruel might be going away sooner than we think. I don't know how they would do it if they only introduced a single new act, but also I don't know if they could have put together all three new acts in this amount of time. So I don't really know what to expect on the act front. I would just think that on the gameplay front, I would be surprised if any major systems got like full shakeups, and if so, only like one. Classes, maybe a couple new ones, and acts. I don't know. So where are you at? What are you thinking?
I think as far as acts, I think that's going to be Christmas time. We'll get the last three acts. That would make sense because 12 months from the release, they'll want to release the last big like bulk installment of the base content for the game. Um, I feel like they definitely need to add a new, like with every single patch, they have to add a new class at this stage. Otherwise, they're never going to get it all done. This is going to be in development for 2 years. And then what was the point of the early access? It's just in development hell at that point. So
Yeah.
I feel like, people say Druid, and I know a lot of people like the Druid sort of idea. I think Templar, but I know that's probably not going to be one of the ones that comes out next. But it's probably going to be Druid in point three. But I'd like to think maybe the Templar is going to be announced. And the other things, like we still got the Assassin, the Gladiator. We haven't got any announcements for that. Um, It'd be good to just get information dumps on what those will take the form of. As far as the game itself, I definitely think ascendancies need attention. Like that's not in a good spot.
Mm.
And the overall progression to Ark doesn't make a lot of sense. The campaign time now has worn its welcome out. Now people are sufficiently agitated, which you and I predicted at the very start of it all,
Oh yeah,
that would
yeah.
eventually run its course. So it's the honeymoon period is very much over, where they have to really pull out some big stuff to get the player numbers up.
Both in terms of, like you said, the diehard players were the Dark Souls type who only wanted to kind of do the campaign once, treat it as a single player game. They're gone, and then also it's that, and also some of the people who maybe liked the campaign the first time and second time around are kind of like, okay, now it's getting old. The combination of those two things are happening.
Yeah, exactly. And the other big thing here that's really interesting is when I did the State of the League video, was it a few weeks ago, a month ago, or something like that? No, on the release of the first week of the new league. So the interesting thing I noticed about the impact on Path of Exile 2 from Path of Exile 1 is it definitely ripped over a majority player base. But we can't see who's playing on console and things like that, right? So there are
Uh,
limitations to what we can see, but the numbers were still very big with the player shift from PoE 1 to PoE 2, at least on the Steam charts. So there's definitely an impact on the PC market. The other big thing is the Chinese servers that are going to be opening up in China in isolation, as far as my understanding goes. So, how is that going to affect the overall player base on the rest of the player base for Path of Exile? Because I think that's going to be an isolated scenario where they're not going to be on the same realms. At least that's from
hmm,
what I've seen. Whether that's true
haven't
or
thought
not,
about that.
yeah, because I think
Yeah.
there was an interview. I could be wrong about that, but that could have a pretty significant impact on markets and trade and stuff like that, considering a lot of the big bulk currency farmers come from Chinese outlets and things like that. Um,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but there's a place, like it exists, and price fixing and all that. So I'm not accusing any particular one person of that or anything like that, but there's
No,
definitely the element of that.
it
Um,
exists. I mean, like without accusing anybody, we know
yeah,
it exists.
exactly. So it's like, how are those things going to impact the game? It's going to be very interesting to see. As far as like balance changes, they can't do what they did in point two and walk back any power they've added at this stage. They have to make nice with that. Um,
I don't know. I think they're
oh,
gonna take a lightning spear, lightning.
oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Lightning spear is ridiculous. Yeah, that's gonna hit the ground with a battle axe to
other
its
than that, I agree.
yeah.
Though they can't keep in general, rather than only rein things in. Try to raise things up too.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of there's a lot of underperforming skills in the game currently that need to be corrected and readjusted. Mana consumption is a big issue. Mana is unsustainable. There's not enough utility in the tree as well around some of these things. Armor defense stats will be interesting if they try and subvert that conversation for another patch. We still haven't looked at it yet, is not going to be an acceptable answer to the player base at this point. Um, and they may very well do that again. Who knows? Minions need a fair bit of attention again because they nerfed that into oblivion. There's just a lot of like it's a game in its infancy stages. So obviously, it's developing, and I've got to make that comment because there'll always be someone who will be like, you're criticizing it for being a full game when it's not a full game. So we're not criticizing on that basis.
No,
It's just
this
objective
is the point of
assessment.
early access, man. I mean, this is they want feedback, and I don't think we're being rude or unfair, and I don't
No.
think we're jumping on anybody. These are hopefully well reasoned, objective-ish. I mean, obviously, some of our personal opinions will come into it, but like I
Hmm.
think we're supporting what we're saying, and I'm not knocking anybody.
Hmm.
This is just kind of where I hope I see the game go.
Yeah, that's it. Like, if they don't correct these things, the game's player base will drop off. And that's exactly what happened in point two. Now, we have precedent set now. So everybody in point one was like, game's amazing, rah, rah, rah. All the negative opinions that were brought in were pushed down to the bottom of the barrel and weren't listened to until we got to point two when the same negative opinions came to the top of the barrel because all the other players had left the game because that was first playthrough material, new game, yay, great. But then the changes that needed to be made weren't made because that feedback wasn't listened to. And what we got was a double down based on the wrong feedback, and then a huge swath of player base left the game. And that is not good for Path of Exile as an overall. It leaves room for other competitors to come in and basically bash the game into the ground, and that's not necessarily what we want to see. So, there needs to be a place where there's fair, objective feedback about some of the nuanced issues that exist in the way that gearing and skill balance in particular. Hopefully, they don't double down their position and remove drop rates again. Like, that, it would be wild if they took that
They
position.
won't. I think having had to revert that once, I'd be shocked if that were to happen again. I'd feel like I was in Ground Day. Like, I don't think so.
Exactly. I feel like the whole conversation around the vision as well. Like at this stage, vision needs to die. It's done. It's cooked. Like the whole vision concept doesn't work. The player base the vision was point two, right? And the player base did exactly what happened in Calandra League, which was it vomited it back out and went, no, we don't want it. And at a yeah,
I'm always wary of putting too many things into the vision things that aren't actually part of it,
yeah,
things that like from the community that they attribute the vision, whatever. So like just to be clear, like just to use clear terminology and define our terms here, things like what would okay, you start. What would you consider to be
oh,
objectively the things that are the vision that don't work well?
ruthless.
Okay.
That scarcity of resource, heavy
Yep.
scarcity of resource, that's what I attribute the vision to, which limits your ability to be able to build up quicker.
I think about mandated meaningful combat. We
Yep.
come we come back to that word meaningful with a capital M, right? There is nothing wrong with meaningful, strategic, player-driven combat, and it exists in Path of Exile 1 uh, in certain circumstances. It exists while you are leveling your character. It exists when you are engaging in difficult content, when you are taking a T17 mod that is just a little bit outside your range. You take a volatile cores mod, and then you need to engage with the content in a much more focused and determined way. It exists in pinnacle boss content, but it need not exist as a mandatory element of just playing the game. If I want to go and farm T16 maps and just blast, if I want to farm delve and just blast, I can do that without feeling that I'm gimping myself. The meaningful combat is something that I can adopt for greater reward or greater challenge or something like that. And so the vision to me is the idea that every single encounter with a rare monster needs to be a kung fu battle.
Yep.
This is not a fighting game. It's not a Dark Souls game. Not every encounter with a monster that has a yellow aura needs to be like this little chess match between us. Nope, that's
Yeah.
out for me.
Edge
I
of
can't
the
do that.
I call that sweaty hands play.
Yep.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like that. You should be able to come home from work and like there should be a bit of challenge there, like not like insane like yeah, you're sitting there like like hitting spacebar every 2 seconds because the whole fight's engaged around tiny
We've got
little
a gif of that guy. Like this is the
yeah,
meme, right? Of I was like clicking and he's sweating, sweat pouring down
yeah,
his face. That's not looking for it. Not all the time.
yeah.
When I opt in, when I brace myself, I'm like, all right, I'm zoned in. I'm going to fight this boss. Fine, but not like every day after work. No.
Yeah, it's too tedious. It's like like when I fight a Crystal King and I'm like, a quarter of the bar and that bar hits like a truck. Like that's the sort of gameplay that I want to play where it's like I got to dodge, I got to use my brain, I got to be alert. But
Sure.
like I can get hit a couple times, but I can't take that third or fourth hit. Like if I take that as too much, it's going to break me. That's the sort of play
Yep.
that I like, where it's like you are allowed to make mistakes, but not like Jumanra Act 2, where you haven't got any gear to fight him, and then basically you got
You
to
hate
sit.
that guy.
I hate Jumanra. I think it's a terror. Like people will be like, it's an amazing boss fight. That is the worst boss fight I have ever seen, because if you play any other build that isn't a spellcaster or range build, you are basically just sitting there tapping base mace strike on it the entire time, and that is not fun at all. Um,
Yep.
Designing campaign bosses like that too. I hope like they drop the HP rates on campaign bosses, allow you to progress a lot more fluidly. Even the Viper boss in Act 3, that's a horrible boss.
I have I've never been great shakes. Fully admit at the kind of telegraph thing, but the speed of reaction time required for how the crowd kind of lines up poison dart throw,
Yep.
I think that's just beyond what I'm able to do, like to do several times in a row. Like I can do it once, and it's a limitation of my play, but I basically need the ability to build to either survive that
Yep.
or to tank her, to spike her down fast, because I am not the kind of player who can consistently dodge, 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 dodge
Yep.
10 times in a row.
Great examples of good boss fights in Path of Exile 2 for those who have been like you're too critical, Jorgen. Act
Sure.
1, Geonor, I think that's a great fight. And Act 3, Doriani, fantastic fight. Those two
Yep.
bosses, I'll fight them all day long. They're actually fun. Um, Jamanra and Cobra Queen, no, horrible.
What's fun about Doriani is interesting. There's kind of a meta aspect of Doriani too, because both in the regular and the cruel, that is often where I feel a build has enough invested into itself where it starts to feel like the build a little bit. You're not at the end game version yet, but you're starting to feel like, okay, I'm using some of my main skills. I'm getting a little stronger. So not only is the Doriani fight well designed from a moment to moment perspective, but it also takes place at a point in the game where I feel like I'm starting to creep ahead of the power curve just a tiny little bit. So it's nice.
Also, you can get punished by the by not memorizing the telegraph moves and still live to call it. Like you have the
Right.
opportunity to correct in the fight. Same with Geonor. It's like, there is an element where there's a little bit of skill that needs to go there when he goes into blood cold mode at the very end. But like for the most, the fight is forgiving. Jumanra, once the lightning spikes go in the ground, then basically you're dodging undodgeable, almost undodgeable damage that's constantly coming at you. It doesn't give you time to react against an enemies whose health pool has not been scaled appropriately for the weapons that you have access to in the act, unless you play like a quarterstaff build or a bow build or a crossbow build.
Speak. So boss fight designs I like to stay on the theme of being positive about stuff. And I'm blanking on his name, but when you are running down the lava river in Forge in that
Oh
factory,
yeah,
and
yep.
there's a guy chasing you, and he's sending lava waves at you, and you've got to dodge him. And I think that's a fun thematic. It's flavorful. It engages my brain. I can't just turn it off, but it's also not impossible. It's not overly punishing. I can take a lava hit and not instantly die. I think that's a well designed fight too.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of good examples of good fights in Path of Exile too, but there's a few big ones like Colossus is a badly designed fight. Also, the
The hitboxes on that
hitboxes.
one are ugly, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. There you got it.
even the corpse skull dude hitbox again. Like if you got like spears, it throws the spears in the opposite direction when you try and hit it. Like if you play explosive spears,
Mm.
so like yeah, not a fantastic fight either. But
And who's the boss of the summoner guy who's got the big bone skeleton? It's a dual boss, the one I'm talking
oh
about.
the
And
this
if you kill one too soon, the other one enrages and it gets, that could use
and you
solution.
get flogged, or if you try and hit the summoner, the
Yes.
skeleton elephant just comes over and just absolutely eviscerates you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
You got it. That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Like they're memorable, but not for the right reasons. But there's many great bosses in there, but yeah, no, there's just a few that need a fair bit of work. Anyway, I feel like we've covered off on a fair few topics here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if you guys enjoyed the way that we approached this, let us know in the description or comments below. Um, I think we're going to keep this series going for indefinite at this stage. So yeah, we'll try and get it back
It's
on
fun.
track. Yeah. 2 to
I
3.
look forward to this every time.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
it's always a good conversation. It's enjoyable. Yeah, we'll try and get these out every 2 to 3 weeks. I think we've both been pretty flat chat with the end of year and whatnot. So work has to take priority as always. But yeah, anyway, until next time, we'll see you guys later on and in the next
Thanks for
episode.
tuning in.
Have a
Take it
good one
easy.
all. See you later.